All right, fans, welcome back to another episode of The Official Visit. And we are joined by a man who needs no introduction at all, but I'm going to give you just a little bit of a rundown of who we're talking to. We're talking to a two-time SEC tournament champion, a five-time SEC East Division champ, four-time first place finish in the SEC, a two-time College World Series champ, though he showed up five separate times at the big dance, a two-time ABCA Diamond National Coach of the Year, ABCA Diamond South Regional Coach of the Year, the ABCA Dave Kylitz Ethics and Coaching Award, very important to me. You got to know how to do it and have a good foundation on why you're doing it. Three-time SEC Coach of the Year, and your three-time National Coach of the Year, the tip of the spear from Big League Factory U, Tim Corbin, head coach of Vanderbilt University. Corbs, thanks for taking the time, big guy.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dallas. Thank you very much.
We're going to get right to it. This is an opportunity to get the message out there, to let the folks know, the fans, the parents, the would-be blue chippers, what Vandy has to offer. And they want to know who is going to be leading the charge. That would be you. What I want to know about a leader of young men, a molder of minds. As a coach, you've experienced trials and tribulations. You've experienced what works and what doesn't. Can you think of the first mistake that you made as a coach that you knew could not be duplicated? You knew you had to fix that. What was it? How'd you go about it?
Well, I think more than anything, probably impatience personally. I think when you're a younger guy, and now I'm 60, into the 20th year here and starting the program at age 40. I was a head coach once before, but at a NAIA school, and then left there and went to a Division I school to be an assistant. But I think the thing that you probably feel is that you can move a program maybe faster than what you can. And I think my personal impatience for myself, for the things that were happening around you, for not having enough awareness about that, the ability to make adjustments with your personality in terms of your expectations with kids. I really feel like it's probably more of a personality trait than anything else, Dallas, but I just think impatience would be the number one thing that I learned through the years about raising kids, building a program, and developing any type of consistency within your program.
So some of the coaches that we've talked to over this entire process doing this particular show, we're kind of asking them, how difficult is it to find talent, to recruit guys and convince them that your program is the right program for you? I feel like in your position, Vandy has such a rich history of excellence as it pertains to college baseball. Is there an incident or an example of you came down to having a decision where it's like, we don't have room for this guy, but we'd love to have him? Like, I feel like you almost have the reverse problem where, guys want to come play for you and there's just not enough spots and there's too much talent that want to actually play for you.
Well, Jared, we've moved away from individuals, but individuals have moved away from us too. And I think as the years have gone forward, it's more about presenting what you have rather than recruiting. I know recruitment is what it's called, but I think once you get into a program and start to understand that, okay, this is what I'm looking for as a player, and this is what I'm looking for as a coach. Does it fit? Does it fit that person? Does it fit us? Rather than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. And I think through the years, I think that's what we've gotten better at. It's just moving towards that kid that academically and athletically and socially fits the profile and the personality traits of someone that we're looking for. Because ideally, if that doesn't happen, then the experiences are going to be good for the individual, and it's not going to be good for Vanderbilt. So we try to want to find that fit more than anything so that person can develop in this environment.
Well, I can tell you right now, Coach, congratulations if you're moving away from Vanderbilt, because you just got paid as a first overall pick as a high school kid, and you don't need to go to college if that's the case. Otherwise, you're all in on Vandy. let's talk about the kids that you have in-house. They're here, they're signed up, it's fall. Typically what happens is before you sign up, and being a guy who's gone on those recruiting trips, you're taken around the campus, you're taken around the facilities, and you're asked to visualize your future. And at that time, typically, you hear the mission statement from the school or from the program. What is the mission statement for Vandy? What are the foundational pillars of success that I know once I set foot on campus, these are going to be the words that I live by. These are going to be the words on the mirror that I stare in when I wake up and go to bed at night. What are those words? What is that vibe from Vanderbilt baseball to the future players?
Well, I think number one, when we bring them in, we've gone away from the weekend trips, Dallas, because a lot of those weekend trips are pomp and circumstance. They become celebratory in nature. So we bring them in the middle of the week where they can really identify with being a student athlete. I think that's first and foremost. And then I think the message, Dallas, it might come from the coaches, but it really has to come from the players. The players have to, they have to naturally be able to say that without it sounding manufactured. They certainly have to model it, because I think if you're a young man and parents and you're coming in to visit a school, you want to see that in motion. You want to see standards and values in motion. You don't want to hear it in front of, you're going to hear it from the coach inside of his office, but at the same time, you have to understand what being the walking, talking billboard of your parents is, being the walking, talking billboard of what Vanderbilt University is, and what that means, and how it's addressed. And I think the thing that in coming in the midweek and being able to see classes, be able to trail a student athlete, be able to see what the training environment looks like, be able to see what it's like after the training environment. And the other thing, Dallas, is being able to talk to those kids who don't play. Because the thing is, having a playing role and being able to speak positively about your situation is one thing. Having a program role, understanding what a program role is versus a player role, which is the first thing that we speak to inside the program, is understanding fulfilling a program role before you even identify what a player role is. Then I think understanding that and being able to talk to those kids that might have a program role right now, they're looking for a player role, and then listen to their words on how they're speaking about the environment. I think that probably matters most, because you're trying to brainwash kids and parents. I don't want to do that. This isn't a commercial. This isn't an infomercial. It's more about understanding the next 3 to 4 years of your life and thereafter too, because there is a life after Vanderbilt baseball, and it entails a degree, but it also entails a situation where our facilities are designed around bringing kids back, because there's that time, as you know, where you leave college and yes, you sign a professional contract, but there's also a time, should I go home? Should I live at home? No, I've already done that. No, let me go back to the place that I just spent for the last 3 and 4 years, because they have facilities for me that will allow me to bring me back to continue developing with people like me. So there's a lot of that goes into a type of visit.
Just for the folks that are listening, and Jared, I'm sure you understand this. When you go on a recruiting trip, the pomp and circumstance that Coach Corbin is talking about is there's probably been a weekend series that's been identified that probably favors the school you're taking a trip to. There's a good chance you're going to celebrate after the ball game, go out maybe with some of the players, and a lot of what you're really going to school for isn't necessarily presented to you, and it's kind of lost on the overall journey to the big D1 program, and the lights are bright, the bells and whistles are loud, and everybody's having a good time. So the idea and the awareness of a program to understand that bringing a child or bringing a player along to experience the day in, day out grind of a work week as opposed to the weekend celebration, that is the first time I've ever had it acknowledged, not only that this is wise to do, but why we are doing it. So, Jared, and for the folks that are listening, this is a huge separator in terms of setting up your program and how you are really ingratiating these student athletes to what life at Vanderbilt is going to be like. Coach, I just wanted to kind of explain it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dallas, because that's the 5 days a week. The other 2 days, whether it's a big football game or a basketball game, or as you mentioned, maybe a weekend series, those are, yes, those are good times, certainly, and those are competitive moments. But yeah, the 5 days a week, the natural progression of a student athlete inside the program, that's the most important thing. That's real. And they need to feel that, because it never goes the way you think it's going to go, regardless of what type of player you are. I don't
Amen.
care how you have it designed. It never goes that way. So the reality check is what you're doing every day and with the people you're doing it, because the environment is people in place, and you need to get a good feel of that.
So I've read Joe Torre's book, for example, and managers that have to manage egos in big markets. And I've noticed that college baseball is gaining more popularity mainstream wise with baseball fans that maybe weren't paying attention before. And Vanderbilt is obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest, college baseball program. Do you find yourself having to manage egos, knowing that Vanderbilt is one of the top, if not the top, baseball programs, and there are many first-round picks that have come through your program? Is that something that you have experienced, or have you been fortunate with kind of having humble groups?
Well, I think ego is important to some degree, because you have to have it, Dallas has to have it, I have to have it in order to be proficient at what we're doing, so to speak. But at the same time, I think the thing that we would want to stay away from, Jared, is high ego, high skill, high need. I think the kid that we want to be more involved in is continuing skill, controlled ego, and low need. And low need by meaning it's not a person that's needy. He doesn't always need your voice. He doesn't always need your affirmation. He doesn't need the moments where he needs to feel good. I think that's going to be there at some point in time. But a low need kid with a controlled ego who understands, yeah, I'm pretty good at what I do, and I don't care what's on my left, I don't care what's on my right, because I'm going to survive in this program, and then yet contain it. And that piece to me is humility. And then the ability to say, I've got good skill, but I'm not done eating. I think a lot of kids, when they're the famous 1, 2, or 3 ranked kid in the country, they can get to a certain spot and stop eating. And I think the kid that's behind him is thinking to himself, you know what, I was never celebrated as a high school player, so I'm really hungry to grow inside this program. And I think the kid that's very hungry, that wants to keep eating, that wants to keep moving forward, although they have skill, but their skill is growing, I think that's the person that really survives well inside this program.
Well, with the desire to eat comes the need for silverware, comes the need for a place setting. And some schools, coach, are offering up paper plates and plastic forks and knives. And some schools are offering fine china right out of the china cabinet. What I'm getting at here, technology is as prevalent in the game of baseball as it's ever been. And I see it at the 12U level. I see it at 14U, 18U, high school, junior college, so on and so forth, right on up to the stellar D1 facilities that you have. How prevalent in your program is technology? How accessible is it to the kids? And how much is it utilized and infused in the daily goings-on of the program?
Derek Johnson, our pitching coach, when I first started, now the pitching coach of the Cincinnati Reds, was someone who was, in my opinion, Dallas, was like a pioneer from a pitching standpoint. He was into arm care, he was into the long throwing program, and he was into pitch design. And when we started building facilities, we had one batting cage. And after year 4, we converted this one batting cage area into a pitching lab. Mm-hmm. That pitching lab that DJ designed now transitioned to Scott Brown 10 years ago. And Brownie and our player development person, Brandon Barrick and Josh Rachowski, have turned that into a special facility, because when you speak to pitch design, ground force, how a pitcher's arm moves, we're very fortunate. We have tools that I don't think a lot of people have. we've raised money for them. We've been able to create them. Our former players have helped pay for them as well. But it's just an area where you have slow-mo video, you have ground force mounds, you have apparatus that can show you immediately after you throw a pitch how it's rotating, what it looks like. It can bring the analytic numbers up on a screen right in front of you. And I think that's important. I think there's a big importance to that. And then from a hitting standpoint, we also have a hitting lab, which creates the same type of situation for the hitter. That being said, we have really nice facilities. But I think the biggest piece of it is understanding how to compete. If it gets down to it, it gets down to a point where, okay, I've got all the information. I've created this nice delivery. The ball comes out of my hand. Now I've got to fight. Now I've got to be a little bit primitive in what I do. So I think we try to reach a pretty good balance between understanding what we need to do to develop the kids, but at the same time get into a situation where maybe the classroom forum for me is that area where I speak more towards the competition piece, towards the mental piece. And I feel like that's something I want to do, but we certainly have the facilities that can build that computer and build that person.
That's incredible. For the arms that are listening, translation, force plates, check. Edgetronic, check. Rapsodo TrackMan, check. Okay? The homework is getting done for you, gentlemen. Don't be afraid to learn something.
You say it better than me, Dallas. You're selling our program better than I can.
Out of all of the coaches that we've talked to, I feel like, no offense to them, I feel like you're the most cerebral one that we've talked to. Where does that come from? Does that come through experience? Does it come from mentorship? Where is the origins of that?
Well, I think age has something to do with it, Jared. Now I've turned 60, but I think I have a huge appetite for learning. I want to learn, and I don't ever want to be removed from the student athlete in any way, whether it's music, whether it's analytics, whether it's understanding the mind. I think those pieces are really important for me. And it's, I'm sitting in my home office right now, but right underneath my home office is a weight room that my wife and I built, and we put a lot of resources into it. The reason I mention that is because it's the first thing I do in the morning. I wake up, get to the weight room, and I turn on a podcast or I listen to a book. So every time I'm working out, I'm trying to build my mind too, because I feel like there's so much more to learn. And every time I learn something, it just makes me think that I still have way more to learn. I almost feel dumb sometimes because I feel like there's so much out there that I need to understand that I don't understand yet. So I have a huge passion for learning, and I have a huge passion for wanting to pass that on. And I think, Dallas was asking, or, was talking about the facilities, but the facility that I enjoy the most is the classroom that we built for our players. And we start in there every day, and I take 30 to 45 minutes and teach. I feel like a first or second or third grade teacher sometimes, just pulling out a lesson plan, speaking to anything that really doesn't have anything to do with baseball, whether it's the ripple effect of a decision, whether it's understanding gratitude, whether it's understanding entitlement, whether it's understanding what a positive life force is. I mean, just it really doesn't matter what the lesson is. I go into great detail about it, but I think in some shape or form, it builds the acumen of the personality skill sets of a person, as well as helps shape their mind moving forward. And I think that's the most important thing, because all these kids have great athletic skills, but they can't tap into them if they don't have general awareness and an understanding of other people first. And I think that's paramount within our program.
Well, your insatiable appetite for information is palpable, through Zoom. And you can understand, and it's very easy to see that has been a separator for yourself amongst your peers and colleagues. For myself, Coach, you talk about pitch design. I was bored last year during pandemic and became certified through Driveline on their pitch design stuff. So I understand your desire to just continue to educate yourself. That being said, as a player, or as a coach, you're going to run into players who have that same desire. So maybe you can answer that question for them here through me. I'll ask it. How do I separate myself, Coach? I'm an underclassman. Maybe I'm a red shirt coming off a bad wing year. Maybe I'm somebody with no money who's nipping at the heels of a blue chipper. How do I separate myself? How do I get Coach Corbin's eyeballs on me? How do I get Coach Corbin to talk about me with his wife in the workout room the next morning? What do I got to do?
Well, I think number one, if you're that type of person and you wanted to be a Vanderbilt student athlete, baseball player, I think first it's the communication within, it's communicating to us, but I think getting in front of us more than anything. I think our camp, and we don't have many camps, but the ones we have, we use to create a training environment to show kids that potentially would have interest in Vanderbilt what it's like. So we try to create the same type of situation. But I think if you're a player, then I think immersing yourself in the game to the point where your energy comes out through your actions, through your look, through how you play. I think those are the things that we're looking for. We're looking for that kid that academically and athletically has a very positive way about them to where they enjoy team, they enjoy being part of a team. And whether it's a Kumar Rock or a Jack Leiter, they like to develop their individual skills, but they also understand, which I think is important, that developing your individual skills to the highest level is immersing yourself in the group. Because if you do what you do, which is baseball, you do it better when you do it for other people outside of yourself. And I think there's an unselfish component that is so real inside of our program. And I'm not saying it's different than anyone else, but we put such a high tax rate on it inside the program that kids understand it and they say, yeah, there's what a program player is inside this program, because it's the first thing that you have to grab to before you understand how to get on that field. Because the reality is the 35 or 40 kids, only 9 are going to play. So everyone's going to stand around the table and watch those 9 other kids eat. So you have to be patient with the process of developing as a player and understand it's not going to happen today, regardless of how good you are coming in. Those are the types of players that, we're looking for, a very unselfish attitude towards what they're doing. Because the reality is, if you're a dad, that's the personality trait you're going to have to take on if you're going to take care of a family.
You mentioned Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter, both of them first rounders this past July in the MLB draft. Do you find the process of building the next duo like that to be an exciting, challenging, or is there a pressure to it because now there's this reputation to uphold with Vanderbilt? What type of thought process goes into, okay, like we developed 2 of the best arms that this draft just saw. What's the thought process behind building the next one?
I think the image in someone's mind here in the program right now, Jared, that they want to be that person. Because whether it was David Price or whether it was Mikey Minor or whether it was Sonny Gray or whether it was Walker Buehler, they were all good, but they were all comfortable in their own skin with who they were. They all had different personalities. They all went about their business differently. And Jack was similar. He was that scientist pitcher that was just so absorbed into what he was doing. Kumar was this big personality who, to me, was like a modern day Bob Gibson. There were arms and legs flailing all over the place when he threw, but you would see such raw motion out there. I felt like with Kumar that he was almost like that 60s or 70s African-American pitcher that you would see and you'd say, you know what? He didn't grow up in a pitching lab. This kid is just natural in how he goes about things. But the reason I talk about those two is because they're so different than Sonny and Walker and David and Mikey, and they just are all unique. But what each one of them had was a believability inside their mind that they were going to be that next guy, because they saw that person in front of them, and they're thinking to themselves, I'm going to do that guy. I'm going to be like that person. That person, I'm not like that person, but at the same time, I want to achieve the same types of things that they achieve. So I think that's the strength of a pretty good program, where you have kids in front of you that have been that before, and you desire to be that person.
Well, I think those are great examples. And Coach, again, thank you for the time. You've spent a lot of time with us. We know you got other things to do. But those are great examples of, in Jack Leiter, how an individual with big league pedigree at home can come to Vanderbilt and use Vandy as a launching pad. And then an individual like Kumar Rocker, who has all the physical abilities, has the intelligence and the character to put himself in a position to become a future big leaguer. He just needed a place to be able to hone that craft. And you have those two very different individuals showing up and doing what they have done. That has got to make you extremely proud. So I'll ask you this final question. I believe we asked you this before, but just for the folks who might not have caught it the first time. As the tip of the spear there, as I mentioned, you are a molder of minds, a leader of young men, not just ball players. When it's all said and done, the last pitch has been thrown, the dirt is off the spikes at Vanderbilt U. What do you hope your ball players, your student athletes, are able to leave with from their time with you at Vandy?
Self-esteem and real confidence that's developed by bettering your character and bettering the inside of who you are. Having a better idea of what morality is, what protecting other people is, understanding and being grateful for the things that you have and the people around you. I think those are the things that probably matter most to me. And because I feel like if they leave here with that, they'll always retain their innocence. And I think innocence is such a strong trait of a person, because even though they grow in age and develop as people, there's a humbling effect to that person, where they always understand where they came from, how they got there, and feel like it could be taken away at any point. And I just feel like for at least for me, that's how I want to see these kids leave here. I just don't ever want to see them change, regardless of who they're around or what they're doing, and have a great deal of gratitude for what they're doing and how they got there.
Coach, I can't thank you enough for spending the time you have with us today. Have a great rest of the day. Good luck next season. Enjoy the fall, because that's where the work is really done. We know this.
Yeah, we will. Dallas, thank you very much. Jared, thank you very much. You guys are both kind to have me.
Thanks, Coach. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. Take her easy.
Okay. Thank you, guys.